Hi, everybody. Welcome to a very special Prog Report Top 5 episode. We haven't done one of these in a little while, but I think we've been saving up for something really special. We have Mr. Trevor Rabin as our special guest here for a Top 5 Trevor Rabin episode. So
Great.
welcome, Mr. Rabin, Trevor, for being
Lovely
here.
to be with you.
Thank you, man. And of course, I mean, this worked out really well because Nick is from Johannesburg, where you are from as well. And so who other than him to be on here to do this with us? So we call him Prog Nick, actually. That's how proggy he is. He has it in his name.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I better watch myself.
And
hello everybody.
yeah.
Wanted to
So
be here.
I mean, look, Nick and I go back a long way with music from your career, you know, your solo career, your stuff with Yes, your soundtrack work, all that stuff. We're really big fans, and thrilled to death that you're back with a new solo record, and we've heard it, and it's amazing, and we're happy to talk about it. Rio, which comes out on October 6th on Inside Out and Sony, and it's awesome. Can't wait for people to hear the whole thing. It's amazing.
Well, thank you so
Amazing
much.
record.
That's a great compliment. Thank you.
And I should point out, I did get a chance to help write some of the liner notes for the record. We spoke a little while back, and so
Yeah, we did. We did, yes.
I mean, just the honor of a lifetime for me. I have to tell you that again, but I'm sure I told you that many times already. But anyway, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about the record, and for people that aren't aware, that don't know the story behind it, and a little bit like that. You know, it's your first solo album with vocals, I should say, in 34 years since Can't Look Away, which is amazing. And of
Right.
course, you had Jacaranda, which is a instrumental record. You know, talk about the reasons behind finally making this record or having the time to make this record, and how it all happened.
Right. Well, you know, in 94, when I started doing film scores around that area, I was very lucky. I got into it, and there was, luckily for me, there was no kind of apprenticing or anything like that. I started not almost, but immediately doing a feature film, which was a Steven Seagal movie, actually. And then my third movie was Con Air with Jerry Bruckheimer. And I had thought, you know, I'll be doing movies for, you know, I'm really enjoying it and working with the old orchestra. And it's like, it's memories from the past as well, you know. But then after the fourth movie or so, where I thought I was going to get back to being in the rock world, it just kind of took off. And now I look at that period, and as you say, 30 odd years ago, I think, where did that time go? It's 30 plus years, and I look back, and it doesn't. It feels like Con Air was yesterday, but
Yeah.
you know, but then I look back and I see there's 50 odd movies, plus a whole lot of TV stuff and sports things. So I have to say that although it looks like, why did I spend 34 years not doing that? It's just what I spent 34 years doing that led to just this frenetic pace, which never stopped until 2012, around there, where I did Jacaranda, which was a great release for me, you know, just freedom from any parameters tying you down in any way, which was just such a lot of fun. And thereafter it was, and to be honest, right from the start, from the first day of doing, it was always something I was going to do. Even when I did Jacaranda, it was, well, you know, the next thing's I must do an album with vocals and more rock-based. So eventually it happened, but it's not through lack of want. You know, I really
Right.
have wanted to do it for a while.
So when did you finally start writing the songs where you said, where you noticed it was starting to happen, that you're getting a collection of songs together?
Well, it's quite funny, you know, even with film, my wife and I would go out for dinner, and she'd look at me in the middle of dinner and say, she'd be talking to me, and then she'd say, "You're not listening to me." And she got it immediately. And it was true. And she said, "You want a piece of paper?" And sure enough, I scribbled down 5 lines and start writing some things over it. So yeah, more and more, as opposed to great ideas for film themes and orchestral themes, or just melodies on a dobro, even whatever it might be. It started turning into ideas for songs. One of the early ideas was on the song Oklahoma. Coming from South Africa, I had come to America and it was enjoying it, and then this bombing happened, and it's like, oh Jesus, that's takes the Oklahoma bombing.
Right.
It really had an effect on me, and I just thought about this place, a very young country, suddenly, naivety leaving for a while. Oops, there I'm moving. And that led to me getting some ideas lyrically for a piece of music. And I didn't know where, what, or when, but I just had this idea. But at the time, it was so early. And I thought, I'm not going to, commercially exploit this horrible situation of so many people have suffered through and are suffering through. So I never did anything, except I had these ideas. And I think that was the first thing that came to mind in doing the album, was Oklahoma. It wasn't the first thing I worked on, but right from the start, it was something I was going to do on this album, because now it's a historical event as opposed to, present trauma to the country.
Yeah.
Trevor, you've mentioned Oklahoma, and I don't want to give too much away about the album. But firstly, let me start off by saying to you how immensely proud we are of you, obviously. And I'm sitting here with a great big smile on my face. This is really my favorite interview to do.
Nick, thank you so much.
You know how proud of you South Africa is. And I just want to say that I've had the privilege of listening to the album and reviewing it for the Prog Report, and it's just astounding. And Oklahoma is just one of those very special moments. But the album does take you to many, many other different places. In fact, a myriad of places. It's got some chicken picking country moments on it, and it's got some real good old classic prog. It's got some orchestral moments, a cappella melody harmony moments, and it's just possibly one of the most varied products I think that you've produced. So I just wanted to ask you about that myriad of styles and ideas. Was it a kind of an anything goes approach, or did you have that as a stated goal?
Anything goes, I think, is one of the descriptions, but I think the other one was, in South Africa, I used to be a session player in South Africa, and in those days of session playing, and I did tons of sessions for Mutt Lange, who was also a tremendous producer, even before he became this icon kind of guy.
Right.
And we're still in touch. I love Mutt. But, you would do sessions in South Africa, and you would go from playing a country song to a poppy song, and then you would do what's called Springbok hits, where you would do in everyone's songs, facsimiles for the record company. And I became really fond of some of these incredible country players. I don't know if you know what the B-bander is.
No.
I'm a drummer.
Yeah,
so
okay.
We know nothing.
So, okay.
The B-bander is something that is attached. It's a whole mechanism attached to a Telecaster, and it works by literally the B string. You can bend the B string up to whatever you want to tune it to. I tune it to a whole tone, and you change that note by pulling down on the strap, and so you can play country stuff, in the similar way that you would use a pedal steel. And I used to do some pedal steel sessions in South Africa, so I just became completely enamored with the what's called the B-bender. And that's what led to saying, I got to do one of these tracks. And that led to Goodbye, which is clearly not a prog rock song. But and just the idea of anything goes was, I'm going to do what I want to do. But I was very cognizant with the producer cap of doing something that made sure that it was all tied together and somehow sounded like it was coming from exactly the same place. And having the album flow properly was something I concentrated on a lot.
So did you demo it first, song by song, or did you go straight to tape?
You know, as I'm sure you know, the old days of 24-track tape, the band would come in and play, and then at the end of recording everything, they pull the faders down and say, okay, now we're going to mix, and you start again. That's not the case with how I work now. I start off and everything is, you're kind of semi-mixing everything as you go, although it's a bit like a jigsaw puzzle, because if something changes at the end, you kind of have to remix it all, you know. You can't try and make a jigsaw puzzle work by changing the last piece. But yeah, you kind of pre-mixing as you go, but then in the end, it's even more tedious than the old way of mixing, but far more satisfying in some ways.
Oh, well, I mean, I could talk about this recording process all day. I mean, if you want me to take up the time, I can. But I'll hand over to you there, Roie.
Okay. You know what? Let's go ahead and get started with the top 5 stuff, and then we'll interject more of this.
No. Then I do have one question. Then I do have one question.
Go ahead.
Come on, you got to give me this. So obviously, Trevor, the South African connection is a strong one. It's there, and the pride, of course, is, as I said, very much there. The album, and I don't want to give too much away, but the album has a lot of topics dealing with South Africa, including, if I can mention this, a song called Egoli, which is the vernacular name for Johannesburg.
Right.
So I just, obviously, as a South African, I wanted to ask you how important it is for you to be singing about your homeland, things that are going on here. Tell us about that.
Well, I think I've been doing it. I've always been pretty cognizant of not wanting to appear to be preachy with lyrics, because you know, who am I as a musician to do it, as opposed to some great philosopher or political philosopher. But I guess as much as a 2-year-old kid, you know, if you're talking about heart. Anyway, most importantly, I think have been commenting. Can't Look Away. The song "Can't Look Away" was about. It was during apartheid, although it was coming to an end. And then, as you mentioned, the Ellis Park thing, which I did, and was lucky enough because of that to meet with Mandela, and he became, I mean, he always was, but was such an icon. And I mean, I think Respect is one of the great leaders ever. So, and then Sorrow was a song about a guy who gets married, but the guy who has a relationship, but he can't live with his wife. And when they have a kid, the wife has to go live with the mother for all reasons dealing with apartheid. And then on this album, Egoli is talking about, you know, now we've gone through that. We've gone through the glorious change with Mandela. And then since then, you know, the current situation, it's almost a kleptocracy, you know, from looking from afar. I mean, Derek always corrects me and says, no, that's not how it is. And blah, you know, he's always correcting me. Oh, sorry, I must keep the picture in place. But so that was just a comment on, on the situation on that song, specifically about Johannesburg, and you know, being stopped in the street, and what did I do wrong? Well, there's a couple of things, but if you want to go, we can take care of it quickly. From those little moments to the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, the different styles. I think the lyrics match with the different styles of all the songs as well, and it's just a really It's an adventurous record. It's really great. So again, October 6th, Rio. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna go into a top five of Trevor Rabin related songs, and we didn't discuss them beforehand, which is always part of how we do this stuff. So we'll go with our each of our fifth picks, our fourth picks, and down the line like that. And if we repeat some choices, it's all good. Trevor, we always give our guests the honor of going first. So what would be your first pick or your fifth choice for one of the songs that you want to bring up?
I'd say in no specific order. The song I wrote for Yes on the last album, called "Endless Dream,"
Yeah,
was
awesome.
one I enjoyed writing, and then playing it live. And sadly, my last tour with Chris Squire was one of my favorites.
Yeah, that was like the big epic classic, long song type of thing on that record, which was
On the
awesome.
Talk album. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And actually, I saw that Talk tour, and I think was that the tour where you guys told people they could listen also on headphones or something to get.
Yeah, in fact, I think the first, was it in the round? Can't remember. There was some in the round. I can't really remember, but we provided with the the first four rows, I think, had headphones, and then as it went further down in the auditorium, it was a kind of quasi 5.1
Yeah,
sound system. It
yeah.
was a feeble attempt of mine, but I tried.
It was cool at the time. All right, yes, love that song. Great album too. All right, Nick, what's yours? Number five.
Uh, okay, so I will never forget the moment. Look, you got to remember, I grew up living and loving Yes as a kid. It's just who I was. They were my favorite band. And for a while there, I thought they'd gone away and I thought it was over. Punk was happening, all kinds of different stuff was happening. And I just will never forget the moment when I heard, and I'm going to join two songs into one here because they kind of are presented that way on the album. I'll never forget when I heard Cinema and Leave It for the first time. I was standing at Wits University in Johannesburg, which you'll know, Trevor.
Wow. Oh, yes.
And my favorite band were back, but it had this very different looking cover, and it wasn't the Roger Dean thing. And
Right.
Okay, but it was Yes. This has to be good. And I'll never forget going back to my res room at Ernest Oppenheimer Hall at
my
at
goodness.
Wits University. Oh yeah, oh
You're
yeah.
dropping.
And
I have no idea what you're talking about, but it's
dropping the needle on the vinyl. I mean, I bought it across the road at that shop that you know, and took it straight home and didn't study for that day. I will never forget the moment that I heard the instrumental of Cinema and then those a cappella vocals that start Leave It. I will never forget that moment as long as I live. My favorite band were back. They were back with a vengeance. And not only that, but there was a South African at the helm who did it. And so that makes that moment for me, Cinema and Leave It, an absolutely historic moment in my personal musical life. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Two things about that song. The video, first of all, which was amazing. Do you remember the video, Trevor, with the floating heads?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'd have to confess that if we were all to be very honest, the band hated it, the video. Absolutely hated it. But, it was the MTV era, and, it was kind of gobbled up by MTV and
No,
actually,
it was a big hit, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
No, but I remember that video like it was yesterday.
It was pretty boring doing it, I can tell you that.
Right, looked cooler in the editing afterwards. But it's probably hard to remember, but how many vocal parts were recorded for that? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, I remember there were it's 16 different. Some were doubled, obviously, and tripled in some cases. And it was okay, Chris. You're going to get these dum dum dum, the low ones, because you have that boomy thing that you're so good at. And it also, the reason it happened where vocals were done before anything else was because we were trying to get a drum sound in the studio. We couldn't get a drum sound. So it was going to happen in a different way. But very thankfully, I must say that we couldn't get a drum sound. And so the song was pretty much an a cappella song from day one, and stuff was added thereafter.
That is interesting. Yeah, definitely worked out more unique that way, right?
Right.
Awesome. Okay, I'll go with my number 5. I'm going to go to the new record to make sure we talk about that one. I'm sure you will as well. But I'm going to go with Push as my number 5, the second track on the new record. To me, this is like the song I was waiting for the last, I don't know, a couple of decades. Like the minute it starts and you have your signature guitar sound, and then there's like the signature, vocal harmonies going on. It's like it is like the blueprint for Trevor Rabin music to me, that song. And the drum performance, Vinny Colaiuta plays drums on that track. And talk about that song a little bit, because that's such a awesome track.
Well, I guess I should maybe preface it by saying that Vinny Colaiuta is the scariest drummer. He's just so amazing. I mean, he played on Jacaranda. Listen, he's played on everything.
Yeah.
But he played on 2 tracks on the Jacaranda album, and he's that guy where you don't say anything. You just let him do his things, and then you improve what you had after he's played.
Right.
Because he adds so much to it that I redid all kinds of things because I wanted to play with Vinny. And that bass drum hit, I got to do that with him. And so he's just such an extraordinary player. I mean, without getting too technical, that song is in 12/8, the timing of 12/8. So if you were to subdivide it, you've got 4 3s, or you've got 2 6s. And what Vinny does is in the beginning, there's a cowbell kind of sound he uses, and he subdivides it into 5. So, it doesn't add up. So, but after a while it does, after a number of bars. And it's almost impossible to think of doing it but Vinny does it with feel. I don't know how he does it, but anyway, without getting bogged down in that, Vinny was, and it was funny in the chorus where it breaks down into the chorus. I sent Vinny a thing. He said, I've redone the chorus, and it's in a weird timing because it goes from, I think it's 10/8 to 11/8 to 12/8, and I just sent it to him written down in music. And I said, look, because it was during COVID, so Vinny wasn't even here when he did that track. I sent him this stuff, and I spoke to him. I said, does this make sense to you? And he said, oh yeah, it's fine. And I mean, it could have been, for him, it's like having breakfast. He just did it. Yeah. And it's a very complex time signature thing, but he just excels at that kind of thing. So, okay, enough about Vinny.
No,
I couldn't agree more. Push is like a progressive rock tour de force, and I promise you, the prog audience out there, you're going to absolutely love it. This kind of makes the point about why you love the deeper tracks on Trevor, the 4 Yes albums that Trevor did. Those deeper tracks, you're going to be reminded of that. You're going to get that feeling again, folks.
Absolutely.
Okay, well, that's great to hear.
Yeah. All right, let's go, Trevor. Your number 4 pick. Your next one.
I was going to choose Push, but I'm going to go elsewhere now.
Okay.
I'd say Tandy is one which is once again, it's also based a South African thing, which I'm sure you're aware of. The Tandy was a rhinoceros who was like a hero rhinoceros. And cut a long story short, it's the lyrics pretty much an anti-poaching song about killing all the rhinos off. And the guitar riff I wrote, I wrote that riff to make it sound angry and have no vocals around it, but to just kind of present a kind of angry yet melodic kind of riff, and not distorted or anything, but quite a clean sound. And I was very happy with that. And yeah, and then the guitar solo on that. I remember my wife walking up. She went for a walk with the dog, and she was about 90 yards away. And that one in particular, I had a Marshall 100 cranked full volume, and I had all the doors open and microphones everywhere. So when she got home, she was like, "Your doors aren't closed," and I could hear you from the bottom of the road because I'd cranked it so much. And I did the solo, I don't know, so many times, not because I thought the takes were better on 3 than they were on 2 or 6, but I was just enjoying playing. So I'd say Tandy would be one that I was pretty excited about.
That's a killer song. I mean, that's one of the heavier kind of aggressive tracks on the album, and
right.
And the riff is just bonkers. I mean, I've heard it many times. I don't know how you would begin playing that guitar riff.
that guitar solo, and this is quite something to say on a Trevor Rabin album, is possibly the finest guitar moment on the album. That's saying something. You know, that's
very kind of you. And it's funny because sound wise, it's not the best guitar sound on the album, but I think I would go along with me thinking that as far as just technically playing wise, it's probably the most demanding thing I did on the record. And it was just improvised. So there was not much thought that went into it. Although, as I said, there were a number of solos. A lot of them are just different. But once I came to terms with what I was going to do, I was pretty happy with which one I used. My only sadness is I can't remember which solo I used. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Or a combination of both.
Right. All right, Nick, what's your next one?
All right, so I'm going to go back to one of my favorite songs of all time, which is not Trevor's proggiest song, but it's just got such a straight ahead, fantastic groove. It's rock as it should be played, it's rock as it should be performed, and it's rock as it should be written. And that is from Big Generator, Love Will Find a Way. I just absolutely love this song. It's kind of one of the soundtracks of my youth, I guess. It's never far away from my CD player. I still have CD players, and
me too.
I gotta tell you, I just love that song. It's just one of the best hooks ever written, in my opinion. So those of you who haven't heard it in a while, go listen to it again. Love Will Find a Way.
Yeah.
Well, that's so great for you to hear that. I originally wrote that for Stevie Nicks, actually. And
no way. I never heard that. Wow.
Yeah. And then as I was finishing off the demo just to send it to Stevie, Alan heard it, Alan White, and he kind of ruffled the feathers and said, "You're not giving that to Stevie." And I said, "Yeah, I am. I wrote it. I'll do what I want with it." And we had a kind of friendly kind of thing. And he said, "Look, play to the band to see what happens." And you can tell by Alan's performance that he liked the song. He's drumming on that. It's just superb.
Yeah. Was it different? Was it sounding different? I mean, did it have the same kind of opening guitar riff around it for her?
Well, what I did in the beginning of it on the Yes record is I actually wrote I think a string octet to start it off with, just so I could keep my hand in before I start movie scores, which I wasn't thinking about yet. But with the copy for Stevie was just starting with a guitar riff.
Yeah.
So but I would say the big difference on that song was because there's a demo of it on 90124, which was an album that was put out. It wasn't even my idea, but just with the demos of 90125 and a couple of other things. But Alan's drums on that really changed the song into something very open and allowed it to breathe very nicely. So I would think that's one of Alan's, bless his soul, one of his songs he liked a lot.
Yeah, love that song. All right, so my number 4, I'm going to stick with that album. I'm going to go Shoot High, Aim Low, which is another one of my favorites. I like the back and forth between you and John, and it kind of has a big crescendo at the end, and all that lookout stuff and all that's going on in that song. Which is great. Do you remember working on that one?
Yeah, I remember it starting at a rehearsal, and it actually started with Tony Kaye was playing a drum machine with the dum to dum to dum clack, and Alan turned on to that and, ooh, that's pretty cool. And then we started playing what turned out to be the chords for the chorus. And Chris and I just started singing. And so within a couple of hours, I think we'd written the chorus. And then when we went to record it, it just developed from then. And it was just a building process. And it was great because it was recorded in a studio in a castle in Caramati, Italy. And so the drum sound, because they were all in this castle, there were these massive kind of ballrooms. So we could get as big a drum sound as we wanted. It was so ambient that we actually put the mics really close to the drums because the ambience was so loud. We didn't need to put mics too far away. So yeah, that's one of the memories of that. And it was a very, I can remember I'm thinking it, when I mixed it, it was a very difficult mix because there were so many elements to, and not let it become just overbearing, too much stuff.
Yeah. Favorite. Sounds great. Okay, you're number 3, Trevor.
I think my number 3 would be Can't Look Away from the Can't Look Away album.
Yep.
And it really just, and I think Lou Molina's drumming on that is superb. And I was just proud and happy of the song, and I think that the vocal sounded okay, and yeah, it's just one that will be remembered by me.
That's some great guitar shredding on that song too. I mean, you really let it rip on that one.
Yeah, that was actually Bob Ezrin was the producer, and he kept saying, "Okay, we're going to do the solo now," and he turned it so loud. I said, "Bob, I'm scared to go to the high notes because it's going to rip everyone's head off." But he insisted. We cranking and we stood in the control room together while I did the solo.
Oh man, that's such a good song. That's killer. Love that. Nick, what's your next one?
Okay, so my next song was going to be I Can't Look Away. And I had a whole monologue prepared for it, but I'm now going to change, if that's okay, Roy, for obvious reasons.
Sure.
So I'm going to go to the new album, if I may. There's a song which happens to be the closing track on the album, which is called Toxic. Now,
yes.
again, possibly not the proggiest moment, or in one way, although when you listen to it a second and a third and a fourth time, it's very layered and
yeah,
actually
very
it's complex.
a pretty odd song also.
It's pretty complex, but it's a full-on guitar-based tour de force. It's about poisonous relationships, if I'm correct, and
yes,
it is really it's one of the high points on the album because it kind of harkens back to your blues rock roots in your youth, what you used to do before you became more proggy, and yet it still gives a very fresh and somehow absolutely novel feel. The production, the sounds, the way you deliver it, and that instrumental break is just something else. I mean, it's a kind of a boogie shuffle, blues shuffle,
right,
and yet it's prog at the same time. So I think it's a fantastic way for the album to end. I won't give away the very, very ultimate ending of the album. People must listen to it to hear that or read the review. But I think Toxic is one of your finest moments, Trevor, and I think it's fantastic.
Well, that's great to hear. I mean, what happened first on that song was actually I'd come up with the groove, and I once I'd stuck it down with the bass and the drums, it was okay. This is. And I just picked up the guitar and started playing, and I did a whole load of soloing, and I just thought, well, that was how the song started, and then everything developed after then. So it's funny you mentioned the guitar and the groove because that's when it started, and then the chorus. I had that riff, and I thought, wow, this is almost like a ZZ Top thing. But it kind of works. It's odd and it's peculiar, but I just thought I'm going with it. I'm enjoying it.
Well, what I like throughout the record is that even when it could have been like that could have been a regular blues rock song, but there's all these little things thrown in there, like those weird harmonized vocal, that vocal part right in the beginning of the song, and all these little things that you throw in, and that's throughout the album, like these weird kind of things that make it just that much more interesting throughout, which I think is really cool.
You're the first person who's noticed that the vocals are harmonized in the verses.
Oh yeah.
Well spotted.
Yeah, no, love that.
That's why he's
Okay.
the editor.
Yeah. No. Okay, I'm gonna go. I'm so happy to get a chance to talk about this song. This is one of my all-time favorites, and it's from the Can't Look Away album. I'm gonna go with Promises. I can just tell you that when I was, I don't want to dating myself, I guess, but when I was like 15, I was obsessed with this album and obsessed with this song. I mean, I must have listened to it every day for a year. It just hooked with me for some reason, and it was just had. I like the way the verses where it's kind of just mellow with like just this ambient keyboard thing, very soft, and then the chorus just
Yes.
it goes loud and bombastic, and that whole
Right.
thing about it was just super killer. I mean, it is one of my all-time favorite albums, and that's the song that, I mean, I like all of them, but that's the song that always stuck out with me. What stories do you have about that one at all?
Well, that was a kind of a message in part to my son, who had just born. In fact, right in the beginning of the song, before it actually comes in, there's a recording of him kind of semi-crying or going,
Yeah. Is
with
that
the
him?
reverb. That's my son, yeah.
Mm.
So yeah, it was, it's funny because I wasn't sure it was going to fit on the album when I first did it, but then when I finished it, I said, well, if something has to go because there's no room or whatever the case is, I want Promises on. So I was also pretty happy with it when it ended.
Yeah, that's awesome. Love that. Okay, back to you. You're number 2.
Oh, is it my turn?
Yeah.
Let me think now. I was thinking of. Yeah, I guess because Big Mistakes was the first single chosen by the record company. I had thought maybe Paradise might be one, but I deferred to them on what the single could get. I'm very close to the album. Obviously,
Right.
I can't hear it yet. I'll hear it in a year and tell you. Paul Linford, who worked with me on the album, did a great job mastering it. I said, I'm not sure if I think the ride cymbal's not loud enough on the chorus of Toxic. And he said, you've finished the album, let it go. I said,
Right.
Good point.
Yeah.
But yeah, Big Mistakes was, the idea of Big Mistakes is, pretty much talking about my early reckless and fun life in Johannesburg and the big mistakes you make when you're a teen and early 20s.
Yeah.
I mean, the band I was with at that time, Rabbit, were pretty naughty people.
That's funny. No, you know what? It's a great opener to the record. Great
Trevor,
single. Yeah.
Trevor, one of the imagery moments that I had when listening to it was I just thought of Hillbrow back in the 70s. Was that right?
That's exactly what I was writing about. I remember Ronnie Robot and I were driving along, I can't remember which road it is, but where Fontana used to be.
Exactly. Right.
And some guy, and we were stoned, but we were going there probably for a milkshake or something, as you do at 1 o'clock in the morning at Fontana and Hillbrow. And this guy, a big guy, what do you call them? Crew cut. Remember the old crew cuts?
Oh yeah.
He jumped on. Ronnie was driving a VW, and there's like a place to spit your feet, and he jumped up on it, and he said, "Hey, how you doing?" The window was open, and we were driving slowly, looking for parking, basically, and the guy pulled out a gun. And so I said to Ronnie, "Put your foot down," and he did. And so that's a moment. I actually thought of that when I was writing with the chorus. I literally thought of Hillbrow.
Well, that's just amazing because that is the image that it conjured in my mind.
Wow.
Yeah.
So it worked. I mean, you wrote it.
Wow.
It worked.
This was not pre-rehearsed, folks. None of this.
That's amazing.
It's actually quite amazing to me because they're only, the choruses are just about vague pictures in my mind about what that meant. And Nick, you pinpointed one of the specific images that was in my head.
That's
and
awesome.
I've spoken to Ronnie about it as well. So that's quite amazing.
Well, mission accomplished, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys. One of the greatest songs ever written and recorded by Yes, in my opinion. Got to go back to 90125. And the song is, of course, Changes. Can't ignore it on a list like this. It's just such an epic moment in progressive rock history. It's not only got that unusual time signature, odd timing to it, but it's at the same time, with that intro, almost got like an African feel to it with what you did at the intro there, Trevor. So yes. I think it's a Rabin and Yes masterpiece. The song Changes.
Well, thank you. It was one, obviously, I had in the bag before Yes, and it's just the band breathed new life into it, and it was a really highlight for all of us in recording the song. The one thing which we all felt and still feel a little disappointed, the very first guitar solo was mixed way too soft, but other than that, we were all very happy.
Trying to think about that. If I remember, I don't see. We wouldn't have noticed that, but yeah, I think.
If you listen again, you'll
I'm gonna listen for that now and see if I pick that out. Part of the ARW tours that you did a few years back with John and with Rick. I mean, getting a chance to see those songs again live. That was really the highlights of those shows. Changes and Hold On. I mean, those were really really cool to watch again.
Yeah, and the exciting thing about that for me was Rick playing on the stuff, because he didn't go in and learn the parts. He did Rick on it,
right,
which
he
gave
does. They did a few different things. Yeah,
he did Rick on it, and it was so exciting for me.
And I've got to tell you, just sitting there, hearing not only those classic songs that are so important to us all, but as you say, delivered in a slightly different way, with Rick's flamboyance and doing the whole tape thing. And unfortunately, he didn't come into the crowd at Denver. I guess there were crowd barriers or whatever, but I know that on other shows in the tour he did.
Right, they walked through the audience.
Yeah.
I think I was that one. Okay, well, since you covered that song, I'm gonna jump to another one. I'm gonna go back to Talk. The opening track, The Calling, for my number 2. Another one that I've just always really loved. That album is an underrated masterpiece of an album, I think. I think Talk is just amazing from beginning to end. And I love, that song. What I've always thought about is, for me, your signature sound, and the thing that I always love that I've only really heard you do is that guitar sound on stuff that opens The Calling. That unique kind of clean, slightly distorted guitar, whatever that is that you do there. The minute you heard that from a Yes song, you're like, oh, that's Trevor Rabin playing. And I always thought that was great. Plus, it has all those harmonies and great solo performances by everybody. It's a real just powerhouse of a song.
Well, it's what I can say about that is, along with Endless Dream, that's my choice of my favorite moments on the album.
Yeah.
So. Fortunate bookends,
Right. What is that guitar sound? How do you describe that? How do you pull that sound off?
It's it's on. I did a guitar years ago in '85, I think, a signature model guitar for Alvarez, and it's just a great guitar. And there's a certain thing, if you put the pickups out of phase, and it gets a bit noisy, so you got to deal with that. But it provides a sound which sounds almost transparent, and when you put the right reverb on it, it just becomes almost a mystical kind of sound, but yet still very present.
Yeah, it's
not drony or anything.
No, it's something you don't hear. I don't know. I can't think of another guitarist that has that sound. At least not common to me. I don't know. Okay, Trevor, your last choice, your number 1.
I think, and it's going to be a strange choice, but my last choice would be Through the Tunnel from the Jacaranda album.
Okay, sure, yeah.
And once again, largely Vinny's performance is incredible, but I really kind of pushed the envelope as far as, you know, certain riffs that are written into it, which I wrote and thought, yeah, oh, that's going to sound good. And then when I did it, it's like, oh shit, I got to practice. I can't do this properly yet. So that was kind of demanding, but it was good for me because I got a bit of a workout.
Yeah. Jacaranda is another album that has it goes all sorts of different places. I mean, is that the precursor to Rio a little bit? That
it very definitely, because once I'd done that, I realized, you know, there's no need to stay in one specific genre and kind of pigeonhole into one thing, because Jacaranda goes from kind of semi-classical to jazz rock, to almost thrash metal in one track I do with Ryan playing drums. And so when I did Rio, it wasn't anything extremely specific that I was thinking, this must be the same thing where I don't care about what I'm doing. I must just do what I feel like doing. And which led to, you know, visiting different genres, but making sure it's encapsulated in the same rocket.
Yeah.
No, I got it. Yep.
Working with all these different drummers like Vinny and Ryan, for that matter.
Yes.
Does it tend to change the way you play when you get the tracks back from them, Trevor?
Well, yes. As I mentioned on Push, once Vinny had played on it, I thought, oh boy, I've got to redo this and redo that, because it can be so much better. Because when Vinny gets it, it's the best I can do with electronic drums. So at least there's something I can play to. But once that was removed and Vinny came onto it, it just becomes a whole different animal, and in the best possible way. I mean, it improved the song immensely. And that happens a lot. It happened with Ryan on Jacaranda once he played on called Me and My Boy. He did such an incredible job. I also reapproached the mix than anything else on that one. But and with Lou as well. The great thing with Lou is he does exactly what is needed, and 10% added to it, you know.
Right. Mr. Solid is Lou.
Yeah, very much so.
Okay, so I guess it's my last one. Now, this was in no particular order, and now I'm really torn. I mean, do I go with something off Wolf or Can't Look Away, or
Wolf? My goodness.
Back to 90125? What do I do? Well, I was going to do It Can Happen as my last choice, but I think I'm going to change that if I can, Roy.
We didn't pick before. Yeah, go ahead.
So, I'm going to go back to a song that Trevor mentioned earlier, which is on the new album. And I just got to tell you, this song, Oklahoma, is something very special. To deal with a subject that tragic and that sensitive, to deal with it as a musician and extract just the right amount of emotion from a historical terrible pain like that, I think can only be done by a true musical genius, quite honestly. But that's exactly what happens with the song. Its melody is just astoundingly good, but it is the way it's delivered, the personal and emotional way in which it's filtered and delivered by Trevor, that I think makes it very special, and it's going to become a classic. I think it starts off with acoustic guitar, flamboyant and tasteful, but then it develops into something else, and it's just so utterly melancholy, just by using pure emotion, that I think it deserves to be on this list. So let me go with Oklahoma.
Great choice.
Well, that's a great compliment. How you what you say about the song, because it was very important. I mean, with every song, but that one had to. If it wasn't going to work perfectly, I probably would have said just leave it off, because I didn't want to do anything which made it less than it should have been. And it's very good to hear, because, you know, as I say, I can't hear the album yet. I will in some time, and hopefully I feel good about everything. There's going to always be little things like, oh God, why did I do that? And it never goes away. But
it's a gorgeous song. I love the whole build up at the end with the orchestra. I mean, it just sounds massive, and
yes,
certainly
yes.
I think your decades of experience doing soundtracks just comes into play on this song to me. It sounds like it could have been the closing epic to a big, you know, blockbuster movie or something, you know.
Yeah, I think the album benefits from, you know, the 50 films I've done with orchestra, I think, and just, you know, the mixing stuff and allowing for things to come through. You know, almost like on a play, you know, the spotlights goes somewhere and then it turns off other people. Too often you hear records where the spotlight's on, but it hasn't turned off the other people. So it's, you know, there's parts that aren't clear enough, and I've been certainly guilty of that. But I think that benefited the mix and the arrangements of stuff on the album.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
no,
very cinematic.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Sure.
Cool. All right. So my last choice, this was a no-brainer for me. It was always going to be my top choice. Just a favorite forever. And I'm going to go, we haven't picked this album yet, but I'm going to go to Union, and I'm going to go Lift Me Up, which is, I mean, just like one of the best songs ever. And love the big, massive drums. The again, that acoustic thing during the verses and the harmonized chorus, just killer stuff. And again, getting to see that song live, I never thought I'd see that song played live again. And so on the ARW was the ultimate thing. So great. And I listen, I'm a fan of that album. But that song is easy #1 choice for me. What, you know, talk about the origin of that one a little bit.
Well, I don't want to spend 40 minutes on it, so I'll just give you a brief thing. I had written that song with Chris. Chris and I wrote basically the chorus together. I had the music for it, and then Chris and I basically did the backing vocal on the chorus, you know, which was fifths, so it had this kind of almost Gregorian feel to the vocal, or attempted to. And but you know, once the song had been written, you know, with my vocal, Clive Davis, out of the blue, I'd never spoken to him in my life, although I'd sent him a demo of Owner of a Lonely Heart before I signed to Yes. And my letter back from him was, while we feel your voice has top 40 appeal, this song is far too left field for the marketplace today. So a couple of years later, I sent, I don't even know if he got it, but I sent a photograph of Billboard #1.
Nice.
Listen, he's got a pretty good damn track record,
He
right?
does, yeah.
Didn't you write him a note saying, "I told you so," or something like that?
You know, I must have added something to it, but I think it was enough. Maybe I sent the letter back with it.
Yeah.
A copy
Yeah.
of the letter back. I think that's what happened. I can't quite remember. It was 5,000 years ago, but yeah, Clive called me, and obviously didn't bring up the Owner of a Lonely Heart thing. He'd probably completely forgotten it, or maybe if someone at Arista he told to send the letter, he probably listened to 2 bars and said, "No, here's my thought." Who knows? But he called me and said, "Look, I'm doing an ARW, no, sorry, an ABWH record,
Right.
and we'd love to hear if you have any songs." So I read that as, they don't have a single. Clive's worried. His investment is in trouble. So I don't know why I sent Lift Me Up, and I did say, this is a song that's kind of quite new. I'm not sure if I might be doing it myself, but if you like it, see what you think. Mm-hmm. And that led to the whole Union thing, putting the whole thing together, because they had this album which they'd had a lot of trouble with. In fact, I think all the keyboard and guitar parts were replaced by the producer, and it wasn't a happy moment for that band, but Chris, me, and Alan had done it, and we got John to come in and sing on it, and then I wrote a song, "Miracle of Life," which went on that album.
Yeah, another great one.
And yeah, and then I wrote a song, "Saving My Heart," which was more kind of reggae-ish, punk, reggae-ish poppy thing. And John just loved that, so we stuck that on. But those were the only things that were involved. And I never, ever, to this day, spoke to anyone about the record. They just took those 3 songs, put them on an album, and next thing they've gaffer taped this tour together. And it's funny because whenever Rick talks to me about it, he calls it the Onion record.
Right.
And I said, you know the story, Rick, why do you call it the Onion record? It makes me bloody cry.
Yeah, well, listen, we have that tour to thank for the fact that you got together with Rick, right? I mean, as
100%, 100%.
Yeah.
AFW was that was my bucket list. I really want to play with Rick again.
Yeah, I mean, I just bought Union on vinyl like a month ago.
Oh wow, how does it sound? Does it sound all right?
It's pretty good. Yeah, it sounds good. You know, I don't know. It's I totally understand you guys as the band and the musicians on it feel in a certain way because it's sort of a mashed together record and you know, not what anybody envisioned, but at the time as a fan, not knowing no internet and not knowing the story behind it, it was like, oh, new Yes record, great, all my favorite musicians on it, great, you know, and it was like that at the time, you know what I mean?
Well, I'm sure that was certainly Clive's thinking, you know, and the promoters involved, but the worst moment, I think, I hope for everyone, was doing the video for Lift Me Up, which actually wasn't a terrible video, but you know, it was done in one day, and every member of that band was in the video, and there's 3 people playing on it, and me, Chris, and John singing on it. So it had nothing to do with the other musicians. So it was kind of peculiar. And and there's
I don't know that I've seen that. I got to look that up.
Oh yeah, it's not great, but it's considering that it was put together in 2 seconds, and they, you know, it was like, you guys have got to work together, and it was like, well, it's probably probably the right thing to do, but it's just not on.
Bit strange, yeah.
Yeah, Rick said to me, "I'm happy to do this but it's not honest. It's not honest."
You know what's funny? As often happens on these podcasts where we pick top 5s, we never pick the most famous song, and so of course we talked about 15 amazing songs without touching base, of course, about Owner of a Lonely Heart. But you know, what else is there to say about that song that hasn't been said already? And it's certainly one of the most popular songs of all time. I actually sent a few friends of mine a video. I was in a random hotel. I had to stop over the night after a long drive, and I'm down at it was like this small rinky-dink hotel, and I go down to get a water. It's like midnight, and what song is playing on the loudspeaker? I'm Owner of a Lonely Heart. So I took a little recording. I'm like, this song is everywhere, no matter where you go.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, and I must say, the one thing which was kind of really is strange for me is, with the first time I heard it on radio, I was living in a place not far from here, a city called Canoga Park. And I had a little house there and wrote a lot of stuff there. But I was lying at the pool, tiny little pool, and the doors were open, and I had this, in the lounge, in the living room, I had this pretty crappy hi-fi system. You know, when you get those hi-fi systems which sound terrible, but the speakers are massive, you know, they look great, but they weigh like, you know, 6 ounces or something, and they sound like crap. But I was lying, and it came on the radio. It's the first time I heard it, and I thought, oh God, we're in trouble. Because it just didn't sound good on there. And then I started hearing it driving in the car and stuff, and then started making sense. And I actually got, it almost felt like every time I turned the radio on, it was on, which wasn't the case, but because of, you know, it's my song, it just seemed to be there all the time.
It feels like that today. 40 years later, it's on all the time. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's still played. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And I think back to writing it on the toilet where the acoustics were good.
That's
And
great.
and it's the one band that no cover band can really do justice because the sounds are so unique.
Yeah, no, it was definitely. And I mean, in fairness to Clive Davis, when he first heard it, it had a similar character to the final, but I can understand him. He wanted things to sound like Foreigner, feels like the first time or something. And it's really had nothing to do with that kind of thing.
You were asked to join Foreigner at one stage, weren't you?
At one point, yeah, when I moved to America, I was on a development deal on Geffen Records, where I wrote a majority of the 901 to Start 5 stuff, and Geffen dropped me for various reasons, no controversy or anything, but I started sending tapes out, and I just spent a fortune in a studio, and I didn't have a fortune, but for me, it was, I basically spent everything building a studio to record in, and I just moved to America, so everything moved over. And I thought, God, I got to get a job. I got to do something. And then Mutt Lange recommended me as keyboard player for Foreigner. Huh. And it was really a sweet thing. Mick Jones, I went there, I auditioned with him in New York, and he called me the next day and he said, if you want to do the gig, you've got it. But I just listened to your album, the Wolf album. He said, I just listened to your album. He said, you should be playing guitar, and you're not doing it in my band. Which was him just being very, very kind.
Yeah.
And I landed up not doing it. I can't remember what was said or what happened, but I know what happened. I got a reply from RCA, Ron Fair, on the demos, and he immediately said, this is a smash hit, Owner of a Lonely Heart. He didn't even mention the other songs, and he actually started cutting it together, and it was very close to me signing to RCA because of Ron Fair, because a great guy, a brilliant record guy, and has gone on to do amazing things with the Black Eyed Peas and Christina Aguilera, I think he produced. But and that's why the foreign thing didn't go any further. And to be honest, I'm happy, because I don't think I would have been too happy being the keyboard player in Foreigner for a tour.
No, it all worked out way perfectly, I think.
Everything is as it should be.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to end here. Of course, Rio, October 6th comes out. Check out Big Mistakes, and Push, I think, is out now as well. Guys, pre-order the album and follow what's going on with Trevor Rabin. I think there's more to come. Trevor, again, this is a treat for us. We're so happy to have you back making music and to talk to you and everything. And of course, having you and Nick connect on all this was a lot of fun to hear you guys.
Absolutely.
Let me say thank you, Trevor, and tot ziens. You'll know what that means.
Oh my God, I was just about to say that to you. That's
great.
Thanks so much, guys. An absolute delight talking to you. Thank you.
This was a blast. We'll be in touch soon. All right. Talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks so much.
Trevor.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Cheers.
Bye.
Hey, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on all our socials and on ProgReport.com for all your news, interviews, reviews, and more. And we'll see you again real soon.